Hello, I'm UglyGekko and this is Endless Legend, a 4X grand strategy game which is still one of the best ones out there despite releasing all the way back in 2014. In this series I'll be looking at some of the different factions that are available in the game, starting with the one that'll make your opponents shit themselves when you appear out of nowhere and snipe their capital, the Forgotten. In this video I'm going to cover the Forgotten's playstyle, units, traits, quests, as well as my thoughts on how strong they are. But if you have the attention span of a 2-year-old toddler, I've included timestamps to skip ahead. Now before we get into it, I have to point out that the Forgotten soundtrack is simply incredible. I mean, just listen to this.
Ages ago, we were banished by our kin. In fear and shame, they turned their backs on us, closing the door. We survived on a world gone mad by embracing the madness. Thus shadow and silence became our allies, and they made us strong. Now the time for payment of ancient debts has come. The price will be high, and we will be paid in full.
So, with that out of the way, what sets this faction apart? Well, the Forgotten are masters of deception and sabotage, which means that they are the best faction for popping up anywhere on the map and stabbing your teammates in the back, or for scaring the shit out of your enemies when you are one capital away from achieving a supremacy victory. As with all factions, they have the standard settler and then 3 unique units, so let's take a look at each one. First up, we have the Assassin. Now these little shits are just like the Brits after a night out in the pub. They can hit really hard, but probably won't be making it home alive. Like all Forgotten units, they have the stealth ability, which means that they cannot be seen unless they are standing directly adjacent to an enemy or within vision of something with detection. Lastly, they have the highly underrated acrobat skill, which means that they're able to pass through enemy units on the battlefield and wreak havoc on their back lines. Next, we have the Predator. These ranged units leave a mark with every shot, which causes the enemy to take more damage from all sources. Along with their stealth, this makes them really good for sniping targets with big health like Urkins or Guardians before your opponents even know what hit them. And finally, we have the only unit you're ever going to need, the Mist. These flying ghosts are one of the best units in the game thanks to the skill called Faster Than Shadows, which spreads all damage to any adjacent enemies. Most factions will shit the bed if they see a stack of these wandering around. That is, of course, if they can even see them in the first place, considering that they have stealth and are flying, which allows them to outmaneuver almost anyone completely unseen. Overall, the Forgotten have some of the strongest units out of all the factions in the game. They deal a lot of damage and have the sneaky stealth mechanic, which can be a lot of fun to use, but they're also really fragile and expensive to build. So, their units are invisible glass cannons. But what about their unique traits? Well, the Forgotten are the anti-vaxxers of the Endless Legend world. They don't trust science, but they're very happy to buy anything that is made with science and then use it to move around the map and cause damage. Their special trait, Science Phobic, means they can't see, gather or use science and instead buy technologies with dust. This sounds strong, but actually can be a bad thing because it makes that feeling of I never have enough dust a lot worse, and you always have to choose the best way to use the limited dust that you do get. So to help with that, the Forgotten get dust from pillaging with the practiced pillage trait and start with the pillage technology. Basically, pillage fucking everything, and then get the dust sense tech and keep pillaging until the whole map hates you and wipe you out. That's how you know you've done it right. But if you're the type of person who prefers screwing your friends without them knowing, don't worry, the Forgotten have you covered. In comes spies. All factions can place spies in the cities of others, but knowledge seekers means that only the Forgotten can steal technologies from other factions, because we all know stealing stuff is much better than buying it. So to get the higher level techs, the spies need to gain higher levels of infiltration, which is why a lot of the unique techs make spies more efficient. Kadata Sanctuary reduces infiltration costs, especially in winter. What's mine is mine increases infiltration security and strength, and learn from others gives all of your heroes XP based on the number of heroes that you have infiltrated. This last one can actually be really strong mid to late game when you have enough dust to litter the map with spies in every city. Finally, we've got expert foragers, which just helps with the early game by giving some loot for destroying minor factions, and search party, which you can basically ignore because it's one of the most useless techs in the game, unless maybe you're the ally. If you have the Inferno expansion, there's also the Dust Opportunist technology, which is even more useless than search party. Honestly, if you're listening Amplitude, buff that shit because it's fucking terrible. Overall, the Forgotten are just like November's Black Friday deals in America, all about pillaging, looting and stealing to buy your way to victory. The last thing we need to talk about is the faction quest. Be warned, there are spoilers ahead, so if you prefer to find out for yourself, then pause the video now and skip to the next timestamp. The first part of the quest has you chasing ruins to eventually find 2 predators and have them join you as units. The Forgotten start the game with 2 glass cannon assassins and a relatively weak hero, so getting these predators early makes it a lot easier to clear minor faction villages. You'll then be sent on a damsel in distress mission to find a Forgotten hero who will also join you and then power up to unlock 2 completely broken, overpowered weapons that will transform your Forgotten heroes from invisible chickens into killing machines. Next, a few spy missions will unlock the Tower of Consecrate, a building that gives +1 strategic and luxury resources when built and is actually pretty damn great. After building a few of these, you'd unlock High Seminary, a technology that reduces the cost of Era 3 tech by 30%. Don't get too excited though, because unless you are an ultimate pro gamer playing on anything other than fast, you'll probably be well into Era 4 before getting this. In any case, these rewards are about as strong as the Steam Monster, and you'll be going for them in most of your games. This is kind of where the good stuff ends though, as the next 3 long chapters have no special rewards until you finish the final chapter, where you get 3 new heroes and the Master Deceiver's technology, which completely removes the upkeep cost of heroes. This is actually insanely strong, but doesn't really matter at this point of the game, since you're either snowballing like crazy and streamrolling the opposition, or you've already lost. If you've made it this far, you're probably thinking, that's great UglyGekko, but all I wanted to know is whether they're super OP so I can steamroll the AI without using a single brain cell. Also, this is the best video I've ever watched in my entire life and I can't wait to like and subscribe. Unfortunately, the Forgotten are one of the weaker factions in the game. The main issue is that they need a lot of dust to buy heroes, but they also need that dust to buy out their technologies, and unlike the Broken Lords, they don't really have many advantages for gathering that dust in the first place, except pillaging, which is not very reliable and pisses off all of your neighbours. So until the late game, they often don't have enough dust to keep up with the other factions. Most of the time, stealing tech is also not really worth it, because again, you need the dust to buy the spies, and you can only steal technologies that others have already researched, leaving you one step behind them the entire time. However, once you make it to Era 3 and start unlocking some of the better dust technologies, you can start snowballing pretty hard and have a decent endgame. The Forgotten also have some of the strongest units in the game, so early aggression in Era 2 can be pretty strong if you play it right. Finally, the stealth mechanic is really fun and can be deadly if you know how to use it. Trust me, there's nothing more satisfying than popping up unexpectedly right next to your enemy's capitals and sniping them for the win. Whether you've stuck with me the whole way or are just a lazy bugger who skips straight to the end, here are my personal thoughts on the Forgotten faction. The faction was released with the Shadows expansion along with the Spies mechanic, and I think they really nailed the theme around espionage and sabotage. All of their units look great, their story is interesting, and there's just something really cool about everything that they do. Forgotten heroes also make the best spies, and after getting the weapons from the quest line, they deal more damage than the Brits on their way home from a football match. Stealth is a really fun mechanic, moving around the map unseen and ambushing enemies is immensely satisfying and can be deadly in the right hands. Even though they are fragile, their units are strong and deal a ton of damage, especially the Mist, who is not just good on the battlefield with the faster than shadows skill, but also on the map where they can fly around with stealth. Buying tech means that you can choose exactly when you want to advance an era. This is different to passively gaining science every turn and hoping that it's going to add up, and allows for interesting strategies like delaying a few turns before Era 2 to get a cheaper settler. The quest line is actually worth doing with good rewards, at least until chapter 5, and finally, I literally find myself waiting for their track to come on because they have such an incredible soundtrack. But even the cool can be ugly, and perhaps the biggest problem with the Forgotten is that not being able to see or gather science means they gather one less resource with the same number of cities. At first this sounds like a good thing because there is one less resource to worry about, but actually it just means that your cities are technically 20% less efficient since you are just not gathering one of the 5 resources on the same number of tiles. Getting dust through pillaging is supposed to make up for this difference, but it is not very reliable since other factions don't really like it when you go around pillaging all of their stuff and usually end up closing their borders or declaring war. As a result, the Forgotten have a heavy reliance on dust without any real advantage in gathering more dust than the other factions. This often leaves them with a weak economy at least until Era 3 when they start to gain the stronger dust technologies. To play them well, you're going to have to take full advantage of their stealth, pillaging and spy mechanics, as well as knowing their quest line to get the most benefit from the rewards. This makes them quite difficult to play, as well as easy to fall behind the others. Even though spies can be really strong, you need quite a few to be effective, and spies cost dust, which you probably need for the research and other things, so it can take a while to get going. Lastly, detection is a hard counter to any stealth strategy, especially in the mid to late game when everyone starts to build their watchtowers. Overall, the Forgotten are one of my favourite factions to play. The challenge makes it that much more interesting when you pull off a sneaky strategy, and if you've not played them yet, I would strongly recommend giving them a try. And that's it for this video, but do let me know in the comments below which faction you'd like to see next. If you've made it this far, then thank you so much for watching. This is one of my first videos and it took a lot of effort, so if you've enjoyed it, I would really appreciate a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.